for his rights, it's called legitimate. But when a woman fights for her rights, it's always called feminism. So, but during the course of my talk, I will be forced to use this word because I have no other choice. And let me begin with the notions we have in religion. In Hinduism, we have Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, Shiva the destroyer. All of them are in the form of a man. In Christianity, God sent his son to the earth and not his daughter. And Islam, we have 1,25,000 prophets. I repeat, 1,25,000 prophets, and not even one among them is a woman. Well, this is just one side of the picture, and it's a matter of perspective. Now let us look at the other side. In Hinduism, it is said the mother and motherland are greater than hell. And Ramayana is taken to be a patriarchal text. Okay? But when we look at it from a different perspective, Ram was sent into exile on the dictates of a woman. This whole war was fought for one woman, and the whole kingdom went into quandary over the chastity of one woman. And if Jesus Christ was born of a miracle, why was not at least this privilege attributed to a man? And in Islam, it says that heaven lies at the feet of mothers. And also significantly, once when a man came to the Prophet and asked him, who do you value the most? Or who should I value the most? The Prophet said, first your mother. And second, he said, again your mother. Third, again he said your mother. And and only fourth was the father mentioned. And in Islam, though slightly, if there is a bias towards a husband being superior to the wife, there is only a one-to-one correspondence between a husband and a wife, but there's a one-to-many correspondence between a mother and her children. So this shows how we need to look at things from a different perspective. And also, coming to Semitic religions, there's always the idea of a woman having the second place because she's supposedly constructed from the ribs of man, and man came first. And this is why, as Derrida said, where historical priority is confused with conceptual priority. And I like to know the response of the audience. How many of you think that, do you think woman was created first or woman was created second? I would like to look at the responses. Please.
Is the priority important?
The chat box. No, that is what I'm asking. How many of you think could I get your response in the chat box?
Dr. Rukhaya, I'm Umar.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello. I don't know whether women were created first or men were created first, but I think it doesn't matter who was created first, because it doesn't mean that one is superior because he or she was created first and the other one was created later.
That is what I'm coming to.
Yeah, okay, right.
I was just coming to that. I just wanted to know the responses of the students particularly.
Yeah.
I see that we have a very responsive audience. There are no responses in the chat box? Or is it that I...
Dr. Rukhaya, I'm a faculty here.
Hello.
Janaki,
hello, Janaki, ma'am.
Yeah, hi, Rukhaya. No, I just wanted to, I have a feeling the students have not really understood the question. I have a feeling that's why they're silent. Do you think you could, Asha, I have a feeling they've not really got it. So, Rukhaya, I think you could just repeat it and ask. Then they might. This is my hunch. I'm not sure. I have a feeling they're not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. I'll do that. Yeah. Now, my question is, since according to Semitic religions, it is generally believed that man was created first and woman was created second. And because this, because some people confuse historical priority with conceptual priority, like the reader said in the case of phonocentrism. Now, my question to students was, what is your perception? Do you think man was created first or woman was created first? This was my question. Just type first or second. Do you think woman was created first or second?
Ma'am, if we go by logic, it should be women first.
I could have your responses in the chat box also. Megha says women is created first. Okay.
Students, please respond in the chat box. You don't have to talk, you just write. She's asking a question to you all.
Women first. Asha says women first. Okay. Amrita says women was created first. Noor Jahan is saying. And there are no responses from boys, or are boys an endangered species, just like in our PG classrooms?
We have very few boys actually.
Okay, sir.
There are just 3 around, I think. 2.
Man first. Okay. Okay, I'm not wasting time any further. I also believe that women were created not first but second. Yes, women were created second, because the second creation will always be better than the first. Nobody creates something worse than they have already created. So just like we have our updated mobile phones and all. So, and to God, even to think so would be blasphemy. So definitely woman was created second. And I agree with that. So Neetu Jolly says just like the chicken and the egg question. So the second creation will always be better than the first. Okay. And that was the first part about religion. And we normally have women is very much instrumental also in the success of a man. We say that behind every successful man there is a woman. Behind every unsuccessful man there are 2 women. And there was an incident where the BBC journalist went to interview a woman in Afghanistan. There's a practice there that the woman walks 9 steps behind the man in Afghanistan. And a BBC journalist went and asked her, she found it a kind of regressive practice. And she went and asked her why. And this was the answer that a lady gave her: landmines. Because, if the landmine explodes, it is the man who will explode first. And the woman will be safe. So behind every man, there's an intelligent woman also. And one thing question that has always come to my mind on a serious note is, if a woman considers herself equal to a man, why do we have reservations? And why do women claim to reservations? So I'd like to mention 3 incidents in this light. I hope all of you are aware of an actress called Zaira Wasim. She was trolled incessantly in December 2017 when she claimed in a video on her Instagram handle that she was molested on a Vistara flight from Delhi to Mumbai. And she accused of a co-passenger of constantly rubbing her against her with his feet as she tried to sleep. And she saw that the airline staff were of no help. Just as she was an actress, Intellectual claimed it to be a publicity stunt. And she had requested to change her seat, and the staff simply refused. And instead, she was asked by the public why she had made the video instead of reaching out for help. So the fact that she had reached out to help was relegated, and this was added to the list of stunts that she wanted to do to gain publicity. And she had no need for that, actually. This super talented actress had just appeared then in just one more film called The Sky is Pink, to end an unbelievable series of movies that included Dangal, that emerged as the highest grossing movie, and it crossed some 2,000 crore worldwide. And she also won a national award for the best supporting actress. And also the movie Secret Superstar was the highest grossing Indian movie with the female protagonist, and she won the Film Critics Award for that. And instead of trolling her, people could not understand why she needed to do this as a publicity stunt. And finally, after 3 years, in January 2020, the court finally convicted the accused Vikas Sachdeva guilty. He has been sentenced to 3 years imprisonment under Section 8 of POSCO and Section 354 of IPC. And in the Me Too movement, all the allegations leveled against the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. And finally, Harvey Weinstein was found guilty in January 2020. It took 90 women, to accuse him of harassment, rape, the Me Too movement, 5 years of court proceedings, and intervention from the New York State governor to finally achieve this. And this is how hard the fight for justice is for women. And coming to a personal example, I joined Nehru College in 2012. And it is an aided college. And when I had gone to see the manager, I gave him my CV, but he refused to look at it. I had a decent CV, but we have only PG English there. We do not have B English main. We have only PG. And he kept on telling me without looking at my CV, teacher, PG ആണ്, നല്ല level വേണം, high level language വേണം. We were speaking in Malayalam. And he kept on telling me that this is a PG English class, നല്ല level. I was just wondering why he did not look at my CV or anything. And he kept on saying that high level വേണം. And because one thing I understood was it was because I was a woman and a Muslim woman from Kasaragod, intersectionality. And I started teaching in Nehru College, and after 6 months, they took the feedback from the students. And there was only one complaint: level is too high. So it took Zaira Wasim 3 years, Harvey Weinstein 90 women, and me 6 months to prove that I taught my students language and their profit on this. They know how to curse. And since then, I have stopped asking myself why women need reservations, because the race is definitely not the same. Now, even if we go to systems of, we think quite often women are reified, objectified. It is true. But if we view this in a larger perspective, we find that even men are reified. We have female infanticide because women, perhaps girls are considered as a dead investment, and rather boys are considered as a better investment. So in that case, they are also reified and they are objectified. And we are the greatest system in India where men are actually reified and objectified, the system of dowry. It is like an auction, and the highest bidder gets the goods. And so we can see that when you view things in a different perspective, we get to see things differently. And we know yesterday also we heard about the heartrending rape of the Hathras victim, and the Dalit girl's fight is not definitely the same. Where if it's a celebrity, she gets instant response, and again, it's not definitely the same. And in the case of Nirbhaya, even when she was raped, that was a thing that made a sensational issue. And even when Nirbhaya was raped, there were certain questions asked. They was asking what was she doing at that time with a boyfriend, and the time when she was out, the fact that she was a boyfriend, the dress she was wearing. All these questions seem to matter than what actually happened to Nirbhaya. But again, the very next day, when a 4-year-old is raped, all these questions become meaningless. Do you question her dress? No. Do you question what time she was out? No. Whether she was a boyfriend? So these, these kind of toxic questions need to be addressed, and these kind of toxic thinking. And even when the Nirbhaya incident happened, one of the boys was just 6 months short of 18 years. And on these grounds, even there was at one point it was believed that he would be let off. So in India, we have a system, as someone said, where you can marry, you cannot marry before 18, but you can rape before 18. So this is the first part of my talk, and the second part, I go to the theory part of it. With your permission, sir, could I screen share?
You can present the
Yeah.
window.
Okay.
You can present the window, right?
I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
My window.
Visible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, visible.
It is visible. So I thought in this part of my lecture, I'll talk about the theory part of the way kinds of post-feminism. There is a general tendency to confuse post-feminism with third-wave feminism, which is not essentially the same. Just we'll have a brief look at the first wave and second wave. You know that this is you're all familiar with this, that the first wave had to do with the 19th and early 20th century, and it dealt with suffrage, political rights, and property rights, etc., etc. The second wave feminism of the 1960s and 80s focused on issues with equality and discrimination. The personal is political. It identified women's, that was a signature slogan during those times. The personal is political and political is personal. And it identified women's cultural and political inequalities and how their personal lives reflect sexist power structures. Now, the problem with the second wave feminism was that it tried to create this concept of woman as a common denominator or a unified subject, and same thing that it had initially set out to contest. And I'll also explain third wave feminism mainly by focusing on the differences. There's a general conception that these are the same, but no, these are different. Third wave is actually a continuation of the second wave, but it is tinged with activism on political protest. If the second wave were the mothers, the third wave were the daughters, and these people are colored more by political protest and activist movements, and they also make it a point to distinguish from their alienated post-feminist sisters. There were particularly third wave pioneers like Rebecca Walker and Shannon Liss, who were very clear that we are not post-feminist feminists, we are the third wave. And the third wave also, it acknowledges these differences in the various identities. It works with the fragmentation of existing identities and institutions. It acknowledges these differences, but at the same time, while it acknowledges these identities, it tries to break free identity politics. And while it does though, that has not resulted in political apathy also. Rather, it is political, and at the same time, it was to break free of identity politics. On this other hand, post-feminism treats these differences as constructions. It does not recognize these differences itself, but just like in the post-structuralist mode, it treats these various differences and fragmentations all as constructions. And while the third wave recognizes these differences and tried to do away with identity politics, it recognizes the diversity and the complexity and ambiguity of the word. And both the second and the third waves of feminism, they are united in their condemnation of post-feminism related to popular culture. Post-feminism is essentially related to popular culture, and it is ruled by market principles and mainstream media. And while third wave was seen by critics to be a more scholarly category, post-feminism was related to popular culture. Now, this is a category that comes under post-feminism. It is called new traditionalism or austerity nostalgia. There was somehow men have an impression that women, while sitting at home, have nothing significant to do. I don't know. I'm not speaking for all men, but some men, there is a kind of patriarchal thought. I think generally, even some women, we see normally she's so educated and she's sitting at home. When we say she's sitting at home, we try to make it a kind of idle act. And also, even my husband, at one point used to come and ask me, what did you do all this time? And there was an anecdote about a man. Okay, one day he comes back from office at 6 o'clock, and he sees the front yard strewn with. He does not see his neat wife with a cup of tea, and he goes to the kitchen. The whole house is messy. The kitchen is loitered with dishes, and when he goes to his messy bedroom again, he finds his wife idly reading a book. And he asks, what the hell? So she asks, do you remember you used to always ask me what I did till this time? Well, today I didn't do it. So that is what new traditionalism, austerity, nostalgia is all about. The new traditionalist or retreatist discourse centralizes or idealizes women's apparently fully knowledgeable choice to abstain from paid work in favor of birth and family. It gives an impression that she herself is making the decision to abstain from paid work so she can be away from the toil and stress of working life in favor of birth and family. And this version of home as a women's sanctuary from the stresses of working lives is articulated. The domestic domain, it is rebranded as a domain of female autonomy and independence, where women get to make their own decisions. So women, again, they retreat to this idea of new traditionalism or austerity nostalgia. And all, if we go to the recession, although all policy decisions were male, and but the effects are never gendered. The effects always seem to be sometimes even all kind of devastating effects are said to be female. So in the case of you have all kinds of natural disasters named after women. You have Hurricane Rita, Hurricane Katrina, tsunami, and have you ever found a natural disaster named after a man? I have. And and not only that, is a kind of language even while addressing these phenomena. The Tempest was found to be flirting. It had a temperamental nature. It was flirting with the coastline, etc. And there was a Florida feminist, I forgot her name. Um, Even in her obituary, she fought against this tendency of naming natural disasters after women. Even in her obituary, it was written that she was a tempestuous Florida feminist, and that is the irony of it. I come back to this. Sorry. According to Susan Falgudi, in her Backlash, the Undeclared War Against Women, the Back to Home movement has to be recognized as a creation of the advertising industry and in turn a recycled version of the Victorian fantasy advocating a new cult of domesticity. So this was nothing but a recycling of the Victorian women's question. When the industrial revolution happened, women also started going out to work. And when they started demanding equal pay, it was questioned. And men, they try to push them back into the private sphere, saying that the public sphere would sully their virtue, and so they had to remain in the private sphere. And it is this kind of recycling of the Victorian question that we find here. And as I told you earlier, during times of policy decision making, there are things like, we have when during this COVID crisis or during the recession of 2008, though these effects are never gendered, but women is supposed to find the solution to that. They are supposed to provide, as men come back from work, they are supposed to provide an austere atmosphere to men. And then we have this concept of power feminism versus victim feminism. Natasha Walters' book, The New Feminism, focused on power feminism versus victim feminism. And there were other critics also like Naomi Wolf, Katie Roif, and Renee Denfeld, who also discussed the discussion between victim feminism and power feminism. Power feminism actually means identifying with other women through shared pleasures and strength, unlike victim feminism that shared it through vulnerability and pain. And Rolfe dubbed second feminism as a new Victorianism because she felt that it actually advocates sexual morality by advocating the vision of an ideal woman as sexually pure. And she's helpless, and yet how this lady, the woman, by being sexually pure and helpless, is somehow morally superior to men. And in power feminism, the woman is unapologetic. So the 1990s, it saw an explosion of new types of feminism. There was corporate feminism, there was doomy feminism, raunch feminism, and perhaps the most famous, girl power. We come to all this. Corporate feminism, it actually highlights the neoliberal ideas of autonomy, choice, and meritocratic advancement. And the poster child of this movement was Sheryl Sandberg, the Facebook executive. And she advocated this neoliberal position, and it this is a deeply individualistic type of feminism that has been informed by market principles. And her best-selling book, Lean In, Woman and the Will to Lead, shows how women how to succeed while crafting a work-family balance. And this also has come in for criticism because it was argued that, especially feminists like Angela Merkel, she said that Sandberg's address was exclusively to a privileged white middle class sector of the population, and it did not include the world of non-elite labor. It ignored the high cost of childcare and the reliance of all these white middle class women on low paid domestic labor of the migrant women. And because of this, the term corporate feminism has also acquired some negative connotations, and it is shown to go to the system instead of questioning it. And because of this, some people also equate Hillary Clinton with corporate feminism because, in spite of all her claims of championing the causes of LGBT community and women's rights, she was known to have cheerleaded many policies that I have actually proved to be devastating for these groups. And then we come to that movement, the girl power and chiclet. And this is essentially a movement that was aimed at a young generation of women and girls. It was propagated in the 1990s. It was pervasive in media definitions of post-feminism. And this particular group, its defining feature is a reappraisal of femininity. While second wave feminism found some aspects of femininity to be disempowering and oppressive, they made use of the same features and they said that it only empowers them. So they use the stereotypical symbols of the feminine enculturation, such like the Barbie dolls, makeup, and fashion magazines, adorned hot pants. They took up these aspects of femininity and made it to their strength instead of treating them as disempowering. So they adorned hot pants, wonder bras, and platform shoes. As you can see, this is the Spice Girls, who were, the poster girls for this movement. And they used, and instead what they did was they took these features of essentialist or disempowering and formulated by men. They took these very features and made it to be cultural markers or subversive. For example, the color pink. In the Indian context, we have Pink, the movie Pink, where the pink is used as a symbol of choice in the movie featuring Amitabh Bachchan and Tapasi Pannu. It is a very interesting movie where I don't know if you have watched the movie. Three guys. The whole argument is premised on the idea that the boys say there is some kind of abuse of these girls by the boys. They keep on arguing that these girls they had taken money from them, and that's why they went along with them. But nothing of that kind happened, and in the courtroom, this argument is constantly made. And finally, the girl, she says that yes, she agrees. Yes, I did take money, but at the last moment, I said no. So that kind of the idea of choice is very much highlighted there by the color of pink. It is made into a subversive marker. The kind of, she says, though she hadn't taken money, she said, even if I take money, I have the choice to give it back. Even a prostitute has the freedom to choose her customers. So that idea of choice is used as a subversive marker in the movie Pink. And synonymous with chiclet, it has become synonymous with another fiction that emerged during those times called the chiclet. It was a female-oriented fiction that it celebrated the pleasures of female adornment and heterosexual romance. And now the negative criticism against this movement was that it was an objectifying trap. Again, it made women to buy into patriarchal stereotypes of feminine principles and market principles, and the woman is flaunting her emancipated status through consumption. In the Indian context, you have this movie, Veer De Wedding. It is called a chick flick. You have Swara Bhaskar, Kareena Kapoor, and Sonam Kapoor playing the lead. And in this also, you see they use these pink as a marker of femininity. But surprisingly, these producers of this movie refuse, though it is a chick flick, they refuse to this label of chick flick and say this is not a chick flick, because it is more or less in that genre. The positive criticism against in this line is it has the potential to uproot femininity and make it available for alternate meanings and readings. Feminism need not always be anti-feminine or anti-popular, as people think so. And as I said earlier, it makes subversive use of cultural signs, the refashioning of feminine identities, and the Spice Girls were the poster girls of this movement. It set the stage for a number of girl bands like the Destiny's Child, Little Mix, and Fifth Harmony. And another mode we have in the post-feminism is the doomy feminism. It is a highly sexualized version of power feminism in response to the late 1970s anti-pornography movement. And it has been synonymous with the work of Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McMillan. And in this, sexual freedom and sexuality are seen to be a key to female independence and their emancipated status. So I'll give you an example from the Indian context again, the dirty picture, Vidya Balan's dirty picture. It was based on the life of the late Silk Smitha. And Silk Smitha and that is why they have put out this name of the dirty picture, an ironic title. But they say that this has to be seen in a larger perspective, because Silk Smitha worked in the 1980s when the film industry was male dominated. And in such a sense, a woman using her sexuality as a weapon made a name for herself. And the producers also say that this is not only about Silk Smitha, it is also about Disco Shanti, it is also about Marilyn Monroe, so we know what they're driving at. So this kind of sexual revolution, it was advocated by cultural theorists like Camille Paglia, who in her sexual personae states that we need to recall the sexual revolution. The criticism against this movement was again that this pornographic material, it was defamatory to women and they were again objectified or reified. And it portrayed misogyny in its most extreme form, and that is why there was Robin Morgan's famous slogan, porn is a theory, rape is a practice. And Shulamit Firestone also in 2003 in her Dialectic of Sex, she said that this kind of sexual revolution, it brought about no improvement for women. And an extreme version of doomy feminism is raunch feminism. It is a degree higher, and that had some way it was equated with sexual objectification. This was equated with sexual subjectivation. And Fiona Atwood in Sex Duck, theorizing the sexualization of culture, she says that in this particular mode, sexual values, public shift to more permissive sexual attitudes, the proliferation of sexual texts, and the emergence of new form of sexual experiences was a hallmark of this particular mode of feminism. And I'll give you another example. No, the example is given by Ariel Levy herself in her Female Chauvinist Pig. She cites the example of the Miss America 1983 Vanessa Williams. She was stripped of her crown because her photos suddenly appeared, her nude photos had suddenly appeared in the penthouse. And because of this, she had to give up her crown. And then with a lot of hard work, she had to re-establish herself after some time as a singer and as an actress. And on another side, we had Paris Hilton, the heiress to the Hilton group of hotels. And I think it was in 2003, she had released, I cannot say that she released a sex video of her and her boyfriend was released into the internet. It became viral. And she gained instant celebrityhood from it. And that is why in 2003, her reality show, I think it was named The Simple Life. Yes, The Simple Life, it gave her instant celebrityhood. She became instantly famous. So in Female Chauvinist Pig, Ariel Levy, she says that while earlier on one had to actually come back from porn, now porn itself was a comeback. So, and Rosalind Gill argues that nowadays women have undergone a shift from sexual objectification to sexual subjectification. And they're presented as active, desiring sexual subjects who are okay with it. And they present themselves in a seemingly objectified manners because it suits them to do so. And again, the criticism against this is that what is actually the notion of the new sexual subjecthood is, or what some people call the new feminism, is actually the old objectification. Then we come to the next idea called liberal sexism. This is very much in vogue. We think we have progressed so much that sexism no longer exists. Okay, we think it is past, and post-feminism gives and post-feminism gives widespread the permission to discount sexism. Uh, I have seen the most educated of my professors, I'm not taking any names, saying that only men can think structuredly, and women cannot think in a structured manner. Who say that intelligent woman is an oxymoron. And the funny thing is, we are supposed to love these professors, our husbands, who make all these kind of discounted kind of sexist comments. Bell Hooks had said, sexism is the only form of oppression where the oppressed is supposed to love their oppressor. And we turn a blind eye to these structural inequities, underlying gender prejudices, and we find these kind of sexual micropolitics in all kind of statements. When Sunil Gavaskar makes the statement that Virat Kohli is in bad form because of his wife. And recently we saw a kind of sextremism. What was sextremism was actually uh, on the part of BJP Nair, the issue that has been going on because of three ladies. Since they did not get justice, the man was apparently making all kind of lewd comments on his YouTube videos. And he was the one who was actually resorting to sextremism, but eventually it was said that these women manhandled these men, and they were accused of eventually of sextremism. And if it was a man who had manhandled this man, if it was two or three men, it would have been a different story. They would have been heralded as a very epitome of masculinity. Nalladayirunnu. But since it's woman, and again it is called as extremism. In what is extremism on the part of Vijay P. Nair in this term, it is, that label has gone down to the women. So in this particular kind of liberal sexism, also we find the cross-nurturing ideologies of post-feminism and neoliberalism, and they are found to be working hand in hand in this dismissal of sexism. And in this also, we are interpolated, like Althusser had said, we are interpolated with this ideology that women are autonomous entrepreneurs and savvy consumers who actually self-brand or objectify themselves as a means of getting ahead. And in this case also, psychologists, they make a difference between hostile and benevolent sexism. Where in the first, the carrot is aimed at enticing women to enact traditional roles, while in the former, the stick is used to punish them. That is a difference they make as hostile sexism and benevolent sexism. Then we come to the next mode called postmodern feminism, discursive construction of this difference itself and this constitute nature of the individual. And it stresses as a reaction to the second wave that this oppression of this women has been legitimated through modern theory and its essentialism, foundationalism, and universalism. And the criticism against this is that people generally look at postmodernism with suspicion, as feminism is subsumed into the postmodernist critique of the tyranny of the signifier. And you know that in postmodernism, the subject is not natural; it is constructed. It is not unified, but it is considered to be a discursive construct, and it is not stable, but it is fluid. So this is the hallmark of postmodern feminism. Prominent example for postmodern feminism would be Madonna. She is considered as the archetypal post-feminist woman reworking her identity. In an interview with Truth or Dare, she said, "You can never access the real Madonna. She keeps on changing herself. She keeps on reinventing herself. And she uses simulation in her videos to strategically change the stable notion of gender. And you can find her hyper feminine and hyper sexualized performances in her music videos and movies. And you can see that her Gote Bustia in her 1990 Brand Ambition 2, she, through wearing this kind of dress, she tries to bear the devices of femininity, and she shows that femininity is actually, it is a device and it can be put on, and it is the idea that it is constructed. And then you in Material Girl also, the song Material Girl, Madonna, she replays the iconic femininity of Marilyn Monroe. Through the act, she puts on the act and dress of Marilyn Monroe, and again she tries to show that femininity is actually a device and in fact it is constructed. Next, I come on to post-colonial feminism. Okay. The difference, post-colonial feminism is actually an offshoot of post-feminism, and it is also a reaction against it. It calls for diversification and a non-ethnocentric and non-heterosexist feminism. That is, it understands the fact that post-feminism was initially directed only at white upper middle class women, and it wants to actually deconstruct the unified subject also as postulated by modernism. It found racial, class, and ethnic oppressions at the bottom of women's marginalization. All these categories were relegated, found out in the popular representations of post-feminism, and it wanted to highlight these factors. But again, it treats gender and differences also. While these women, the difference is that between post-colonial feminism and third wave was that while these they wanted to highlight the marginalized also, they also tried to show these marginalizations were only constructions. That is the difference between post-colonial feminism and third wave. Third wave feminism tried to break free of identity politics while recognizing the differences. But they say that these differences do not exist. They are basically constructs. So post-feminism, it offers possibilities for women of color to re-signify white middle-class Western feminism. And white post-feminism also, it elevated the traditional center of male, pale and yale over the periphery of black and female. So till now, there was only male, pale and yale as the center in post-feminism. So at a certain juncture in post-feminism, this movement emerged. It was a reaction against, and again, it was also a part of post-feminism. And this, the people mainly behind this particularly were the black and lesbian feminists. Also in the Indian context, Gayatri Spivak had written in her Can the Subaltern Speak? The white man wants to rescue the brown woman from the brown man. An example for post-colonial feminism is hip-hop feminism. Hip-hop, if you see, hip-hop, it has traditionally history of being misogynist, and it sexually objectifies and disrespects women, ranging from the use of video vixens, misogynist language, and explicit rap lyrics, doing anonymous works in graffiti to show that gender is neutral, breakdancing, and hip-hop music. Breakdancing in particular, in hip-hop feminism, it was actually called, instead of breakdancing, it was also called b-boying, boying, B-O-Y-I-N-G, to show that this is a dance that is exclusive to men. So they try to use of the same features of hip-hop feminism and try to subvert it. And this kind of feminism, it came into being with John Morgan's book, When Chicken Heads Came to Roost, My Life as a Hip-Hop Feminist. For Morgan, hip-hop feminist designates a contemporary feminist stance that engages with, and it identifies all kinds of feminism that engages with ambiguity and difference. And some poster girls of this hip-hop feminism are Lil Kim, Nicki Minaj, and they also are known for their hyper-stylized and theatrical performances, neon-colored wigs, a series of racially and sexually diverse alter egos. And for this, Nicki Minaj had actually created, you see, she's dressed up as, it is called Harajuku Barbie. Harajuku Barbie. And the criticism that has come against her is that when she creates this kind of a Barbie as a colored Barbie, she's actually again subscribing to a heterosexual subject. But this has to be seen in a different light. While Britney Spears and Carrie Bradshaw were actually the icons of white post-feminism, by, by creating this kind of Barbie, she actually represented a fracturing of that ideal. And then we come to queer feminism. Okay, this particular movement, I just prepared this one in the morning. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Judith Butler's theory. How again, just like the binary configuration of subject, the binary configuration of gender itself is disrupted. And you're aware of Butler's concept of performativity, where she speaks of gender as not what one is, but what one does. And it is described as a series of stylized performances. She gives that analogy of going to a cupboard and selecting a dress. Okay, you have a limited number of dresses in the cupboard, and gender is just like that. Now you have male, female, and she says that if you had been given more options, you would have chosen from those. So now in the cupboard, you have only male, female, or one or two transsexual, or anything. All the different variations. So the thing is, she brings us this analogy, and she says all these are constructions, and it is a matter of choosing, and it is what we do by a series of stylized performances. And she talks about the metaphysics of presence. The body is taken and you inscribe meaning. You put a long hair, that you walk in a certain way, and then this is how gender is created. And she says this kind of performativity where gender is described through performance, it can be both subversive and it can, there's a spelling mistake here, it can constrain also. Like we saw in the case of Madonna, she can subvert it also. You can use this kind of performance, like we saw that Madonna did in performance of Material Girl. You can show that gender is actually a device, and again it can be subversive also. That is why we have this concept of drag. You have Lady Gaga particularly with her different male alter egos. She imitates gender. She has each time you find her dressed in a different kind of way, and in imitating gender, it implicitly reveals the fact the imitator is imitating gender itself. And one example that was provided for us was the L Word, the drama, the Hollywood series that was actually criticized for its lipstick lesbianism. In this particular, this might not be true with all the movies that you find, queer movies that you find, but in this particular movie, it was portrayed as two ladies who were full of makeup. They were seen to embrace each other, and again, they were catering to the needs of the male gaze. That is why this particular movie came in for criticism. And of course, we have the latest fashionable cyber feminism. Now, cyberspace, it offers a gender when you cannot even identify gender and sexual identities. It can be questioned, it can be problematized in a fluid form, and it does not necessarily privilege a patriarchal form of femininity and female subjectivity. This cyborg does not mount a report, and it does not. It actually mounts a repose to the Cartesian subject. It deconstructs its dual nature of the Cartesian subject that verges on the mind-body dichotomy, that where the mind corresponds to man and the body corresponds to the woman. And it deconstructs all kinds of worlds, the difference between the animal world and non-animal world, the difference between man and woman, and also difference between the animal world and the inanimate world. So it deconstructs all these kinds of dialectical pairs, eroding its inherent dualism. And it is found that women also, they have always been technologically othered. I don't know, somehow I have always asked have people thinking that women, even for personally I had this experience. Do you know this? Some basic things that we are supposed to know. And it is this history of this technology's gendered bias towards men that Donna Haraway rethinks in her 1985 article, A Manifesto for Cyborgs. And she also builds on this concept in her Simian Cyborgs and Women. And we always have this idea that, we hear all kinds of huge names like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Charles Babbage, who created the first computer. But what is not highlighted is that the first programmer was actually Ada Lovelace. The spanning tree protocol that was necessary for network computing was actually invented by Radio Pearl and a woman. TCIP, Transmission Control Internet Protocol, was actually invented by Judith Estrin. All these are relegated, and Elisa Shevinsky lean out the struggle for gender equality in tech and startup culture. She actually writes this book. If you have we earlier encountered the book by Sheryl Sandberg saying "Lean In," by formulating such a title, this is a direct challenge to Sheryl Sandberg's book "Lean In." And she says that she begins by saying that she quotes the controversial journalist David Stredfield's New York Times article, where he says the internet was created by man. She begins her book like that. This myth is a blatant lie, because if the first programmer was Ada Lovelace, then we need not to say more. And again, in this age, we find kind of, even women, in this age of technology also, women are seen to be relegated. You have female office assistants. You have Siri. By default, Siri is a woman. You have, what was that? Alexa. You have Cortana. This was a discussion I was having with my sister. This is actually her idea, actually, Professor Zeenath of Farouk College. And she was telling me, even here, there is a master-slave dialectic here also. Where you tell the female office assistants, Siri, do this. Alexa, please put on that. Cortana, Microsoft's Amazon, so Alexa, and Apple's Siri. So all these, even the gender bias is very much there. And why is it there? Because always assistants are women. In all these dialectical pairs, you have the master-slave dialectic. Assistants are women. Whether it is a nurse, the first idea that comes to our mind is a woman. We have to say male nurses. That itself shows the bias. And then we say, what is it? Secretaries. Secretaries are always women by default. So this kind of master-slave dialectic is cyber world also. And again, you may ask, are algorithms sexist? Definitely they are sexist. Because they can be sexist. We find all kind of sexist memes coming up. And how can an algorithm be? Firstly, it depends on a success rate. And what was the second one? I forgot. The idea of the number, how many it is shared. So these depend on, and okay, the third factor was a history. It depends on these three factors: a success rate, how many times it is repeated, plus the history. And based on this, we find certain memes being repeated again and again, because the success rate depends on it depends on number, how many times it is shared, and then a history of it. And sometimes the success rate also sees which company or institution has produced it. That again will be patriarchal. And again, the success rate fails to see that most these representations are by men. And this is how algorithms also can be sexist. Okay, so coming to the end, we discussed in postmodern feminism that the criticism was that a woman comes under the tyranny of the signifier. But how? Because Derrida himself says there's no transcendental signified. Then if there is no transcendental signifier, then the signifier has no existence, just like the gaps in between itself. We have Freud, where he says that women have penis envy, and in the same breath he talks of castration anxiety. He says that men are always driven by this fear of castration anxiety. And if that is the case, women need not he refutes his own logic. Women need not have penis envy, because then they are free of this castration anxiety. And Lacan says that when man comes in access to language, he loses access with reality. And again, he says language is equated with men, and the pre-semiotic reality is equated with women. So, in spite of himself, he himself says what is real, the pre-semiotic maternal facts, women, and that is real. And when a person comes into the light of himself, he says that male is unreal and woman is real. And again, we find people making parallel claims to the speech being equated with man and silence being equated with women. On the same plane, we have them saying mother tongue. So with that, I close my session today with a quotation that maybe once woman was created once from the ribs of man, but innumerable times after that, he from her womb. So thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was such an engaging and deep paper. So it's time for a fruitful discussion. Do raise your questions, comments, and suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Rukhaya.
Thank you, sir.
It's open for discussion now. Asha, please lead it.
Yeah, please feel free to raise your questions.
I think Janagi ma'am might kickstart the discussion.
No, Umar, it's not necessary that.
You're the right person. That's why I'm saying, especially when it comes to like this. You have a great expertise and all of us here.
Just a minute. Rukhaya, thank you for that very exhaustive presentation. I think it has been a while since we had such a lengthy, such a comprehensive and exhaustive presentation. Actually, I think you covered the entire spectrum of more or less the white Western feminism, the different layers and different dimensions up to now. But I just wondered why you didn't touch upon. Can you hear me? Am
Yes,
I
ma'am, I
audible?
can hear you.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Okay,
can hear
okay.
you, ma'am.
Yeah, all right. Is it just for the this itself took such a long time? Is it because of the paucity of time that you didn't touch upon the other aspects, which really I think fundamentally question the very premises of white feminism, market feminism, capitalist feminism, which comes from the people like the black women writers. You did mention Bell Hooks briefly. I remember that. But at the same time, certain fundamental questions have been raised by many of them to the extent that they even decided to give off, give up the very term feminism. You know who I am referring to. It was Alice Walker who suggested that let us have the term womanism and not feminism. So I find very often when we discuss, we do not take very seriously the very what do I say, very critical voices who have questioned the fundamentals of the whole feminist thought, particularly the white Western feminist thought. So I was just wondering, is it so? Maybe I can surely understand that it took such a long time. Is that the reason why you decided to keep that away? Or for instance, the Dalit feminist movement? Because when we were talking about women, their oppression, etc., I can't just forget the what is actually what has actually taken India or Indian women by storm since yesterday's the rape and murder of the Dalit girl from UP in Delhi. I mean, she died in a hospital in Delhi, and we cannot get away from that. The kind of though there is a commonality of oppression everywhere. And I happen to hear a very interesting comment in the news debate yesterday on NDTV. I forget the lady's name. She has written a book. Actually, I mean, she's a new author, so I'm not able to remember the name. But her new book has apparently come out, and it is called "Why Men Rape." And so she was saying, just as we think oppression is intersectional, we have to start about thinking about privilege also being intersectional. Privilege is also intersectional. People who are in power, that power is also intersectional. So she made a very interesting point there. So there are so many things, so many doubts that arise within me. I mean, these are certain random thoughts that came into my mind. I can't call them questions. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about also the feminist vigilantism. When we to refer to Vijay P. Nayar's how he was woman handled, I would say woman handled, not man handled, woman handled by the three women.
I
Apparently,
used it in a subversive way, ma'am.
pardon, Asha, did you, was it?
I used it in a subversive way.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know,
it was
I
actually.
understand. I understand. I quite, I'm totally in with the spirit of your position. So that's why I said woman handle. So woman can also handle, but it is also a kind of a vigilantism. Which I'm not very comfortable with, because anybody can use this. Anybody can use that. There's a see. This is what I wanted to point out. Like for instance, even about the Me Too campaign, there have been critical voices from within feminism itself. And I think our understanding and our approach will not be complete without factoring in that criticism also. I think it's time that we started talking about that too. This is my humble submission. Not, I mean, I understand the kind of frustration and desperation from which such acts emerge, but there is also another side to it, which can be dangerous to women themselves very often. It can be self-defeating sometimes. That also needs to be taken into consideration. It may not sound very celebratory, but I'm not in a very celebratory mood right now because I feel things are too complex and too dangerous and too much against women, staked against women. So we need to move very cautiously here. It's very important because somehow I feel when we circumvent the due process and go head on, then we are also, doesn't it become undemocratic in some way? This is a question that I want everyone, all of us to think together. Are we also talking about the same kind of vigilantism, which we often see in superstar films, and we critique. We critique people like the superstar images that have been sold by people like Amitabh Bachchan or Rajinikanth or whoever, who they come in the dead of, like people like Shahenshah, they come in the dead of the night, and it's a vigilantism. That vigilantism being reprised by the feminist idols. How salutary can that effect be? I'm not very sure about that. I mean, and I also remembered, I think you made a very important point about corporate feminism and that particular book, Lean, because there is a lady called Nancy Fraser who doesn't figure in our discussions ever. She's the first person to take this capitalist feminism to task. And she was saying whatever the feminist movement started criticizing in the beginning, that very object of criticism appropriated feminism, which is capitalism. So these are just random thoughts that struck me. I feel it's high time we started talking about the conflicts within the whole monolith also. And I also wondered why you didn't talk about feminist thought and movements from this side of the world. Is it just paucity of time? I come back to the original question. I'm sorry if I took up too much of time, but your paper was so rich. It made me think in so many lines. That's why I wanted to say all these things. Thank you, Rukhaya. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you so much for invaluable output. It was quite thought-provoking. And I agree with you that some people may misuse this, but when if you look at it, these ladies have also made use of such, I think, of such an extreme step out of sheer desperation, because they probably they have tried all the means in their hand, and our cyber laws also are so weak. But then, as you said, yeah, maybe tomorrow somebody, if too many people may applaud it, there is a possibility of people misusing it also. But then I think, but you know the but I think how many women, this is the first time a woman has taken step. At least men will be a bit more careful. It is taken for granted normally, especially on the cyber world. It is taken for granted that women can be trolled mercilessly. They can be witch hunted. We know about the recent death of Sushant Singh Rajput. The difference is that when Jia Khan suicided, she had left her suicide note saying that her boyfriend was responsible for the death, and still that particular person is roaming around free. But when it comes to a man, his girlfriend is, mercilessly she's witch hunted. First, the claim was, and he has not mentioned anyway that she's responsible. First, the claim was that she had siphoned off funds. That was proved to be false, and then it was abetment to suicide, and then it was homicide, and then it was that she forced him to take drugs. Now that has also been proved to be false. Now what next? So that is when it is a woman on the other side, it takes a different kind of narrative. And as you said, I myself, when I was creating this presentation, I was aware that I was not making use of Indian categories or Indian, because that is of the paucity, because of the paucity of time, because I have a class then extra also, ma'am. And I thought, but I thought, okay, now I have brought, I'll restrict myself to Western post-feminism. But even while making that presentation, I was having a guilty feeling that, okay, I'm not referring to these. That's why I came up with some Indian examples of the movies. I was very much aware of that. And I was very much aware also of the fact that even the way our syllabus is created, the way our universities are conditioned, I think universities can start all our theories, all our theories, not only feminist theories, everything is Western. Most of the okay, at least now there's some kind of change, but I think most of them, we need to formulate our own categories, our own theories, and that can make a lot of difference. And that is why I have focused only on a particular what do you say on particular categories of Western feminism. That is why I've only referred to that, because I had to restrict
Yeah,
myself to 40.
I perfectly, yeah, yeah, I perfectly understand, Rukhaya. It was not a
And
criticism,
I
so much as
perfectly agree with you,
understanding.
ma'am. I agree with you, ma'am, because those are also pertinent questions and pertinent points that we need to raise. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Rukhaya.
Anybody else? Anything else? Any question?
Hi, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Neetu, I can hear you.
Hi, ma'am. My name is Neetu Loli, and I have a question. Recently, especially in Kerala with the Vijay Nayak case, the feminists have been accused of being selectively responsive. And I myself, I think I am a feminist, but still, I still find myself to be selectively responsive in some cases. So I often find asking myself, is it because I'm a hypocrite, or is it because feminism can't help but be selectively responsive? What are your thoughts on it?
Neetu, that very much depends on the kind of person we are. That you know that better than me. But yes, there is a kind of hypocrisy. And yesterday I had read a status by Priya K. Nair, who said that even women can be capable of toxic masculinity. There are cases, but on a larger perspective. But you cannot every person has a different story to tell. Every person's struggle is different. There is probably, Bhagya Lakshmi, her struggle is different. That is why she had to finally resort to such a drastic step. So each story is different. We cannot view everything with the same perspective. And selective feminism, mm, recently, you may be aware of Payal Ghosh's allegations against Anurag Basu also. And side, most of the
Anurag Kashyap, Rukhaya. Is it Anurag
Anurag Kashyap.
Kashyap you're talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes, the director, no, ma'am.
Yeah, it's Anurag Kashyap.
Kashyap, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anurag Kashyap, and many people are on his side actually, saying that he was a staunch feminist, and many people. So they also, you find you on one side maybe that, and as Janagi ma'am said, when one woman falsely accuses, it actually, it actually puts a question mark of all those who are, uh, putting in a legitimate struggle. So we don't know. Perhaps what she's saying is true. Perhaps what she's saying is false. But that is the danger of it. When someone takes a negative step, we are also speaking on behalf of all feminists. And I said there are many people who call feminism Fox feminism, and you have more people, uh, you're just adding up to this. So it's up to us, up to different people on whether you want to practice selective feminism. Suppose you don't know, sometimes a man may be innocent also in this case, but then you're also, you're what do you say, you're making it different for, very much difficult for all your sisters who are facing similar struggles. So I don't know whether you call that. And a selective feminism, ladies, there is selective feminism. There are people who practice selective feminism. There are ladies with a heteropatriarchal attitude. Like, for example, in the dowry system also, there are more than the sons, it is the mothers who actually demand the dowry in some cases. I was actually talking about the reification part. Men are objectified in such systems. But actually, the driving force you see in such cases also, these ladies are adding to this patriarchal system. So, and this is my point of view. Selective feminism, it depends on the person and the issue at hand. Right? For in the case of Anurag Kashyap's case, he may be genuine, he may be not at fault. In that case, if I support him, will it be called selective feminism? I don't think so. If he's in the right, but I don't know. It depends on the situation. It depends upon the person.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Rukhya, can I add to that a little?
Please,
What
ma'am.
Neetu asked is a very
Please.
interesting question. What Neetu asked, thank you. What Neetu asked is a very interesting question, and what I would like to tell her and everybody who has this, I think even I have these doubts very often. What exactly, where do we stand? See, it is that feminism is a spectrum. It is not a monolith. You cannot always be at one point, because it's also constantly evolving and the questions are changing. It's a situated feminism. And just because you don't stand in one side, feminists are divided, but they don't fall. It's not that, oh, they stand and fight. That's it. So there are divisions, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about feminists being divided over issues. So you need to don't feel bad. It's the way you are evolving as an individual and as a feminist. So it's not, and there are people who went very strong, independent-minded women who completely debunked feminism. There are also people like that. So don't be embarrassed, don't feel inhibited about your doubts. Just go ahead and explore yourself. That's more like it. Be genuine. That's much more important.
Okay, ma'am.
That's all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for adding to it, ma'am. As ma'am said, it is always important to be self-reflexive and self-critical. It helps us grow. If we look inwards. Good, you had such a kind of thought.
Hello?
Hello? Yes, sir.
I'm Omar. And it was a wonderful
Yes, sir.
presentation. I feel like patting myself because I was instrumental in inviting you in a way.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and the thing is that it was really wonderful. And where you started, things about by asking the question, who was created first, whether men or women. I read somewhere, it's sort of a joke because when God first created men, realized that it was a mistake, and then He created women. It's a kind of a joke. Okay, so then you refer to the master-slave dialectic. Is the Hegelian dialectic. As you know, this dialectic is basically dicey. It's the master always feels unsafe, and it's so precarious. It so happens that the balance of power might tilt in the slave's favor at any time. But in the history of patriarchy, or in the human history, what we see is that patriarchy has, or at least is showing signs of being eroded. Means, for example, there was a book. It was published something like in 80s. It was about remaking man by David Jettisi, and I have read in so many other places. Patriarchy is its grip is weakening, and following the Abu Ghraib incident, which was widely publicized, it was said that patriarchy has lost its final, the final coffin on the nail of patriarchy has already been hammered. Such things were said, but despite that, the tenacity of masculinity or patriarchy seems to be, as evil, as vicious as it is. So, how do you read it from the Hegelian perspective of the weak, the inherently weak grasp or grip that patriarchy or the master has on the slave, and for example, the recent events. To what extent can we read it to be a very good sign of patriarchy's grip weakening or loosening? Yeah, I just want your take on this.
So, in a way, when you speak of the master-slave dialectic, it is the image of the slave that helps to build the master. And the master is nothing without the slave. So in this case also, as just like the Rita also has said that sometimes also in the context of Orientalism, the margin of the East helps define the center of the West. So I think that happens also in the case of this master-slave dialectic. The margin of the slave helps build the center of the master, and it is this the weakness, all the things that women are synonymous with. Weakness, passivity, as I said, lack of intelligence, all this help to build the other called the man. And I think they particularly make use of this kind of this kind of dichotomy, this kind of dialectical pair to build, it is actually like the mirror stage, it helps to build oneself. In this case, the weak actually helps to build what, by attributing women with all the opposites of what they are. It actually helps to build the male ego. In this case also, in the recent case of Vijay P. Nair also, probably he has, he cannot blame probably he's probably by, marketing on his supposed idea of feminism and the weakness or any kind of trolling. He was actually trying to boost his own male ego and build himself through his YouTube videos to an audience that would cater to these kind of rubbish, and he was trying to bolster his kind of male ego, and that kind of, you can find that kind of dialectic in these kind of and also, there is a kind of when a woman, she's constantly, there is as Janagi ma'am has said, there's some kind of vigilantism, and there is kind of moral policing, and all this, even on the cyberspace you can find this, this kind of dialectic happening, and women are shown down. It is only to bolster their ego, so that functions, the opposite functions, the weak, showing them as the weak, as passive. It actually helps construct the male ego. That is my understanding, and I understand that how it works in the current world also. So I have to think a while for more examples. That is how I think it generally works.
Thank you. It was a very good reply. And through your presentation, you have disproven what some of the teachers, some of your professors said, that women cannot think in a very structured way. Yours was very structured, much better than most of us can do. It was very structured. It was a great presentation. A lot of congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, sir. Any more questions?
Yeah, as Dr. Janaki said, it was a very rich presentation. I suppose there would be more questions. You can use the chat box too.
Okay, if there are no more questions,
Yeah, if there are no more questions, we'll wind up the session. Asha?
because I've got a class the next hour.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
the
know.
class.
She has to leave. Thank you,
Yes.
Rukhaya. Beautiful. I really enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you for your insightful responses, ma'am. Thank you.
It was a pleasure listening to you.
So,
Thank
ma'am,
you. Yeah.
ma'am, shall we wind up then?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Rukhaya ma'am. It was a quite interesting session. And as Janaki ma'am has already pointed out, it has been quite some time since we have in our department, we have had such a long, exhaustive, engaging, broad presentation. So thank you for your
I
time,
thought
ma'am,
mine
and
was
thank you
short,
for...
actually. I thought it
Sorry?
was short. I thought I'd
Oh, no.
ended roughly. Yeah,
Not
that's
short
why.
at all. Not
Not
short
that
at all.
short, ma'am.
Very
Because
exhaustive.
I had a class the next hour. It was scheduled at 11:45. So I was going very fast, and I'm sorry for my speed.
No
Oh,
worries,
so
ma'am.
you're
You could have
late for the
listened.
class. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. She has a class at
It's
11:45. Okay. Okay.
Okay, ma'am, then. So thank you for being with us and thank you for your quite enlightening paper. We could have listened to you for more time. Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you, teachers, scholars, and students for your patient listening and for your active participation. So we shall meet again next week. Until then, see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Asha and Umma sir, for the invitation. I really enjoyed myself.